All right. So the camera. Let's get into the camera. And after the camera, we'll do some Q&A. The camera. Canon, Nikon, Sony. Anyone shoots a Sony? There's probably someone out there shooting a Sony. Now, Sonys are actually pretty cool cameras. Sonys have some features on them, and they have some glass. It's really nice. But anyways, so Canon, Nikon, Sony, Hasselblad, Mamiya, all right? Whatever. This camera, as a working photographer, is just a tool. It's a hammer, it's a screwdriver, whatever, it's a tool. And Nikon makes awesome tools. Canon makes some really great tools. Sony makes great tools. We've got this Hasselblad over here. This is one of the older H3Ds. Chase Jarvis's we'll be giving away later today. No, we won't. No, we're not. But an amazing tool. This is a really nice hammer. Like, don't drop this hammer. Okay. A beautiful tool. I've got my old Hasselblad 500 that's a gabillion years old. Great tool, right? But they're just tools. They're just apertures and shutter speeds. Do not worry about, if you have Canon, whether you should have a Nikon. If you have a Nikon, don't worry about whether you should have a Canon. Like, it doesn't freaking matter. I know people who make gorgeous photographs with Nikons. I know people who make gorgeous photographs with Canons. I know people who make gorgeous photographs with Sonys. I've seen amazing stuff come out of a Pentax, if you can believe that, right? You put that Hasselblad in the hands of a great photographer, and just wait till you see the pictures that come out of that camera. But you take that Hasselblad and you put that into a mediocre photographer's hands, and it's sad. Just get on Flickr and just start looking around, going, oh my God, really? Like, that camera should be revoked from some people. The pictures there should be. And it's fine if you shoot those pictures, just don't show it to the world, right? If I was Hasselblad, I'd be paying them to take those pictures off of Flickr. Like, don't say my camera shot that. All right, so whatever you have, whatever, Canon, Nikon, whatever, all right, it's just a camera. It's just plastic and metal. So if you're shooting a Rebel, great. If you're shooting a D3X, awesome. If you're shooting a 5D Mark II, God help you with your autofocus, but awesome. It's fantastic. If you're shooting a 70D, a 5D, a 20D, whatever, all right. The camera, to me, is really the least important part of my kit. And that kind of sounds silly, but here's the deal, is this day and age, our camera bodies are the most disposable item in our camera bag. Over the life of a working photographer, those camera bodies are going to be moved out of your bag at a much faster rate than anything else. I still have some of those same old flashes I've been using for years. The lens, my 35 f2, still using it. Whatever lenses I bought 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I still have those lenses. You know, and as the camera bodies leave, the lenses stay. The flashes stay, the pocket wizards stay, the cables and the sinks and the batteries stay. All my stuff stays except the camera body, all right? Now, back in the days of film, you'd buy some really good camera bodies, and they were made to last for 20 years, and you keep your camera bodies for a long time. It's my personal opinion that since camera manufacturers understand that these camera bodies are darn near disposable and you're going to want to change them out every couple of years, I don't think the quality of build is in them like they used to be. And they're just not, they're built quite as like a precision tool like they used to be. And I start having issues with my digital camera bodies after a few years because I think they're just kind of starting to fall apart, right? So my D100 sits on top of a refrigerator. All right, it sits on top of my refrigerator. It's almost kind of like my little altar to my beginning of my career. There you are, up on the refrigerator when I'm getting a Coke. You know, there's my camera I started with, but it sits just collecting dust. Right? But that 35 f2 I bought for it, I'm still using it. All right, so whatever camera you have, that's what you've got to work with. All right, when I'm looking at a camera body, the considerations, these are really the main considerations I have in pretty much the order that I think about them. All right, full frame versus a crop. So we're talking about DSLRs right now. You know, these digital cameras built off the 35mm system of old, that full frame versus crop. I started on crop sensors and moved to full frame, and I don't think I'll ever move back to a crop sensor. Now, one reason is I love wide angle lenses. And on a crop sensor, you lose that width. I love wide angle lenses. When I was on a crop sensor body, I'd put a wide angle lens on it. It was never wide enough, never wide enough, never wide enough. Now, I know people who love telephoto lenses, and they love crop sensors because that crop visually gives them a longer lens, right? So for those of you, if I'm speaking, Greek, you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. If we have a sensor in the back of our camera, right, full frame, and our lens covers edge to edge of that, a full frame sensor, this was basically the size of a 35mm negative. A crop comes in here somewhere, and we're only seeing part of that sensor. So everything that normally our lenses would show outside of that, we're losing some of that viewpoint of that lens. All right. So I'm a big fan of full frame sensors, to the point of, if you gave me, let's say you said I could have a brand new Canon 7D, which is crop, right? 7D is crop, brand new 7D, Zach, or you could have a used 5D Mark I, the first 5D. I would take the used 5D over a brand new 7D, personally, for me, because I want that full frame. I want that full-size sensor because I love wide angles, all right? And that is where that matters to me. To some people, they're like, no, I'll take the crop sensor, I'm good with that. I'd rather have the newer 7D because I'm totally into like telephotos, or I shoot sports, and I need my 200 to act like a 300, and on and on and on. Does that make them wrong? No, it doesn't make me wrong, it's just different styles. So, what are you shooting? What's your style? Do you love that wide angle viewpoint? Crop, or go full frame. Next thing I look at is ISO performance. All right, ISO performance is crucial to me when picking a new camera, especially shooting events, weddings, or anything like that. Even so much as if you're a headshot photographer and you live in Seattle and you like to shoot everything by window light, and many days there's not a lot of it. On cloudy days, if I'm shooting a headshot, I could be shooting at ISO 800. And I need really good performance at ISO 800. One reason that I had to become very proficient and very quick with knowing how to light and get into situations and bring flashes in was because I started with a Nikon D100. And its ISO performance was horrendous. I couldn't shoot above ISO 400. And even ISO 400 was nearly just unusable. There was so much noise. You'd have to have a permit from the city because there's just so much noise going on in that picture. You had noise the size of golf balls. It was just a horrendous camera at high ISO. So when I got into low light situations, I had to light the environment or light the subject that I was shooting. I had to, because I couldn't. When I got my D3, when I got that D3 and I shot that thing at ISO 6400 for the first time, I looked at that and I said, well, there goes my workshop. Like, you don't need lighting anymore. Look at that, ISO 6400, it's gorgeous. Like, I can't even believe it. It's amazing what these cameras can do. So as I go forward, I'm looking at ISO performance. I'm looking at crop. AF performance.
Zach, quick question on the ISO performance. How do you find out, based upon the camera that you have, kind of how good it can be? Is that just play, or?
Yeah, you shoot a scenario at ISO 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, whatever your camera will go to, and then bring those, really go make 11 by 14 prints of those pictures and lay them out in print, fairly large. And you'll see, oh, my camera falls apart here. Like, this is unacceptable. You know, it's one thing when noise starts to give us that old film grain look. That's kind of why I like the D3. It's got that kind of, it's more grain than noise, but you have to shoot it to see it. Now, I've read all the reviews. I looked at all the pixel peepers, and we call them measure baiters. They're like, well, you know, we're actually getting a third more volt charge in the blue channel of the chip of the, if you look at this picture of a
There's
squirrel.
a quote.
You know, yeah. And sometimes, thank God for people that just totally just pixel peep at 5,000,000% all their pictures. But there's nothing like going and shooting it yourself, making some 11 by 14 prints, laying them on a table, and just checking it out going, I'm acceptable with noise up to this point. And anything beyond this point, I don't like it. With my D100, it was about ISO 320. And anything beyond that was just unacceptable. My D70 got me to ISO 400. And then when I went to the D200, I was up to about 640. And when I went to the D3, I was at like 1600, you know. And so when I upgraded cameras, it helped me in that ISO performance. But honest to God, most of the stuff I do is around the studio or is lit on location. And once you bring lights out and you're lighting things and you're living in ISO 100, 200 range, it's kind of an even playing field. I could shoot something in the studio with a D3 and a Canon 5D and show them to you side by side, and like I dare you to find the difference between them. But I go out and shoot available light with the D3 and the 5D and bring them to you, and you'll see the difference because they're different in different lighting conditions. What I love about the 5D is available light. That late afternoon available light, the 5D does something. I can see it. Someone posts a picture on their blog or whatever, they shoot with a 5D. I just know it. I see it. You know, late afternoon, available light, 5D. As far as in the DSLR world, nothing beats it. All right, next up is ergonomics. All right, now I shoot Nikon. I have a Canon and a Nikon system. I got the Canon for 5D. Thank you very much, Laforet. I hate you. We're all, you know, I tried to get into video a long time ago and then had to get out of everything, and the video is calling me back again. So of course, get a 5D Mark II for video, and I like it as a camera, but it doesn't feel right in my hands. The Nikon feels like home. But I know people who are like, when they pick up a Canon, like, yes, this feels right in my hands, and they pick up a Nikon and like, this doesn't feel right. And people say, should I go Nikon or Canon? Pick it up, put it in your hands, and that will help decide. Just the feel of it. Because remember, you got to know this thing. You've got to pick it up off your side or out of your bag, and it's just got to fit in your hand, and you have to know it. It has to just, it's like some sort of sci-fi flick where it just becomes part of your hand. You know, it's part of your arm. And you are holding it, and you're not even thinking about it. And for me, that's Nikon. When I pick it up, Canon's getting there. And in fact, I'll get into that later. All right, lastly, the last thing I care about is megapixels. I really don't care about megapixels. I have seen gorgeous 16 by 20 prints off of 2 megapixel cameras. Like, at some point, like, it's just stupid how many megapixels are getting shoved into these little chips. Like, you give me 10, 12 megapixels and I can do my job. Really. I mean, we can do a lot of what we're doing off of 6 megapixels. I don't need 30 billion megapixels. As I look at medium format backs that have a ton of megapixels, I'm not looking for the 80 megapixel camera. I don't need that much. I can't afford that many hard drives. It's about the quality of that chip and not the quantity of megapixels. I saw a great sign not long ago that says, buy a camera, not megapixels. Don't buy megapixels, buy a camera, right? So when I'm looking at cameras, the last thing I care about is megapixels. I think a 7D probably has more megapixels than an old 5D, right? Most likely, somewhere about that. I don't care. I go that old 5D because of the full-size chip. If it was 8 megapixels, fine, whatever. As long as it's a full frame chip that's of good quality, that's what I care about. I care about good performance at ISO 800, and I do care about autofocus performance when I'm shooting events, weddings or events or anything like that. Autofocus is key to me. I'm not shooting as many events anymore. I'm pretty much just straight up portrait work now in my life. Just everything that I'm shooting and concentrating on is portraiture. And so portraiture is I'm going to sit you down in a lighting condition that I dictate. I'm not, and I have control over the situation. So at this point, focus isn't quite as crucial to me. All right? So like I complain all the time about the 5D Mark II and its autofocusing, because compare that to a Nikon. The Nikon is on. The Canon's like, And when I teach workshops, there'll be 12 people shooting, and Nikon photographers are, and Canon photographers at the end of the day are like, does anyone have a flashlight? Can someone hold this cell phone up next to their face? Can someone help me? Can Nikon, can you turn your AF assist light on so my Canon can focus off of it? I mean, I just see it in the field all the time.
I have a funny story about that. I shoot with the 5D Mark II as well. So I had this headshot session, first ever at my company. So I'm at the 8th executive, and it's a little darker in the room because I have off-camera lighting. And I'm trying to shoot, and it's blinking. I'm like, hold on, this guy has to go. He has a minute. I'm like, hold on, it's coming. I'm almost pretending to click. I'm sweating because it wouldn't turn in at all. The autofocus wasn't kicking in.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
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 Bolts of sweat.
I know. Please stand by. Please stand by. And you know your gear. I got to keep a flashlight around. If I get out to a situation where there's not a lot of light, and even though I'm lighting it, but there's not enough to focus in, I know that Canon needs a flashlight around so I can focus the thing.
I know.
My Nikon, not so much. So if I was a full-time wedding photographer, me personally, there's no way you couldn't pay me enough money to be a full-time wedding photographer with a 5D Mark II. I hate that camera at weddings, especially at receptions. Oh my gosh. At wedding receptions with a 5D Mark II in my hand, I am saying so many curse words inside of my head. I hate that camera. My Nikon, click. It gets it. A Canon will come along, but whatever. You got a 5D Mark II and you're shooting weddings, have at it. Because you know what? I know 1,000 photographers shooting weddings with 5D Mark IIs. They're saying a million cuss words, but they got it. Susan, shooting weddings with 5D Mark II?
I do. I'm not saying any cuss words.
No, you're not saying cuss words? Well, good for you. Good for you.
I don't swear though, so.
All right. I try not to. Okay. So the camera, this is what when I've got a camera in my hand, I'm thinking exposure, I'm thinking focus, and I'm thinking white balance. And that's it. That's all I'm thinking. I'm working with my exposure. I'm dealing with focusing the lens, right? And whatever white balance I need to be on. And that's it. I'm not worried about picture styles. All right, I don't set up a portrait style or a landscape picture style. I don't go tweak lots of different settings inside of my camera. I shoot a raw format, right? So I shoot raw, and I deal with all that stuff later in post-production. If I want to increase the contrast, I do it in post-production. If I want to decrease contrast, I do it in post-production. If I want to desaturate the picture, I do it in post-production. If I want to sharpen it, I do it in post-production. I just have my camera set up to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 on all of those picture styles. The few times I deviate from that is if I'm setting up a shot and I specifically see this picture as a black and white photograph, and this is going to be black and white. I just know. I'm going to love this picture black and white. Then I will go over to my camera, I will set it to monochrome and shoot. Because I just want to preview it on the back. Is it black and white? Is it going to look good black and white? It's going to be great. Yeah, I'm going to like this black and white. And I'll shoot it monochrome, just so I get a preview of it on the back of my camera. All right. So sometimes I also flip that around on the client, going, I'm setting this up. This is going to be black and white. This is going to be great black and white. I'm going to shoot it black and white. And I go click, and I show them the camera, and it's black and white. Now the little secret is when you're shooting raw and you pull that picture back into Lightroom, the initial preview comes up black and white, and give it a second, and pop, it goes back to color. When you're shooting raw, you have all the color information there. But I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to black and white in post-production. And when I deliver it, if I know, if my brain as a photographer is saying this is a black and white, my vision for this picture is black and white, then that is getting delivered to the client black and white. And if they come back and say, well, can I see it in color? Oh, remember, I turned my camera to black and white. It's as though I put black and white film in the camera. Oh, okay. There are times I believe so much in this must be black and white that you can't get it in color from me. I believe in it in black and white. Now there are other times too, like, oh, you know what, it works in color or black and white. And they get both. Here's the color version, here's the black and white version. I prefer the black and white version. And usually what happens with clients is you prefer one and they use the other. That's what always happens. You give them the worst picture you took just to kind of beef up the edit, and that's the one they put on the cover, right? So, focusing, all right? Focusing, I worry about that. Now, here's something that the reason I want to bring up focus is I see it in pictures, and I see photographers doing this as they're working. I set up my focus on whatever camera I'm shooting, typically in the single servo or one-shot focus, all right? So that means I lock my focus in, and then if I need to recompose my photo or whatever, I do that. I do not use the continuous focusing of my camera, especially in portrait situations. I never use it in portrait situations. Here's why. You're setting up your focus, and Dave, I've got you sitting there. I bring my camera up to you, and I'm going to focus in on you. And if I'm on continuous focusing, meaning as long as I'm holding down that shutter release, it's constantly focusing on you, then that means I have to keep an AF point in my viewfinder on your eyes. Now, this is what I see a lot. I see a lot of people composing photographs around their autofocus point. They bring that AF point onto someone's face, they focus, they take a picture. And this is something I want you to think about. Those AF points in your viewfinder were not put there by artists. They were put there by scientists, engineers. Those AF points are there for some engineering reason. I need an AF point here, 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 and here. They are not compositional tools. Autofocus points are never compositional tools. Like, I just need my focus over here somewhere closer to the edge of the frame, focus, and I recompose. Now, if I'm a focus recompose guy on an auto or a continuous focusing setting, then as I recompose, that AF point might hit your shoulder or might hit something in the background. And I see a lot of people getting stuck on continuous focusing and composing their photographs around AF points, and the compositions aren't really well balanced because, and you can see it, if you study photography enough, you can look at someone's photograph and I know exactly which AF point you were using. It was right over their face. Their face should be here in the frame, but it's here in the frame because an AF point was there. And that's where you composed your picture. Do not compose your photographs around your autofocus points. Just don't. Sometimes a composition may show up on a focus point. Whoa, hey, look at that, it worked. But most of the time not. And I see so many people composing around those AF points. So as I'm working this weekend, it's going to be single servo or one shot focusing. And I will move, I always focus on the eyes. 9 times out of 10, I'm focusing on the eyes. I move an autofocus point somewhere up in my viewfinder, closest to the eyes. Focus, lock it, and slightly recompose. A lot of people ask me about back button focusing. Let me grab, that was loud. Sorry, internets. A lot of people use this back button to focus. I don't. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. But here again, and again, this class is kind of, I'm trying to hit a whole bunch of myths that are out there. Because I've had photographers say, well, I was told that I'm only supposed to use the back button. By who? Well, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so say they use the back button and that's the only one they use, and I try to use it, I don't like it. Well, then don't use it. For God's sake, don't use, but so-and-so says, screw so-and-so. Use the front button. You know, and I know people who love the back button. Like, dude, I use the back button, watch this, boom, boom. And I'm like, whoa, that's great. You're doing a great job with the back button. I can't do it. Why? Number one reason why I don't, I'm a left eye shooter. So that means I'm looking through my viewfinder of the left eye and my thumb is right there in my eyeball. So it's just really uncomfortable for me back here. Plus, I came up in days when we didn't have a back button. We had just the half press of the shutter release, and that was your focus, or turning your meter on or whatever, and then you took your picture. So that's what I've always known. And for me to try to switch to go to back button, like it would just, go with what you know. Go with what's comfortable, all right? So I'm a half click, turn on the focusing, turn on the meter, and recompose. Now what you've got to be careful of recomposing, you're gonna see me, and I'll be mumbling this in my breath a number of times this weekend, is I'll be saying, focus, recompose, focus, recompose, focus, recompose. Be careful, Zach. Focus, recompose. So let's say you're gonna see really quickly why I'm a photographer, right? And not an artist of the drawing type. Let's say I want to make this composition in my frame, all right? And the closest AF point I have is right there, right? We have AF points here in the middle, maybe here, here. If you have a Nikon, there's like 8 billion of them. So this is the composition I want for my picture. And these are my autofocus points. And there's not one near their face. So I pick, probably in this situation, this AF point. I swing my camera over until it's to their eyes. Focus, hold it down, lock it, and then slightly recompose my picture. I want a very, very subtle kind of movement. So Daphne, if I'm coming in here and I'm taking your picture and move my AF point to there and turn my autofocus on, there we go. But that's not the composition I want. The composition I want is right there, right? Your sensor back here is your focus plane, all right? So we have our subject with a big nose. Golly. Nose hairs. All right, and we have our camera sensor here, and I'm focused on this eye. All right, that is some distance, whatever that is. If I then tilt this camera too much and change the angle after I've focused here, that distance is longer. Suddenly my sensor is either closer to you or further from you. So if I swing this too much, I could lose the focus on your eyes. So the focus recompose is you've got to have a steady hand. And if you focus, okay, I'm focused, and then I go, oh, actually I want this composition, I have to refocus because I changed the distance. So when you are going to focus recompose, you focus, and it's just very subtle movements. And the closer you get to the subject, the more critical it is that you're very careful in swinging this camera. All right. Now, little things like with the 5D. Your autofocus point needs to find a contrast line. It needs some sort of very strict line of contrast or something to lock in and focus on. If you try to just focus on someone's cheek where there is no line, it's just going to hunt and peck and hunt and peck, right? So when I'm running out of light with a 5D Mark II, I go to the center autofocus point and I just sort of stay there. And the center AF point is the most accurate. And then I'm thinking of focusing on the eyes. And if I'm having a hard time seeing the eyes, I think of where are the eyes on the plane of this photograph. And I'll find like a contrast point around the side of their head, where here's the side of their head, and then here's the background, and that line visually that I see in my viewfinder, I'll lock in on that line and swing my composition back around. Sometimes if they have something like lines on their shirt or something, and I'm trying to think what area of their shirt, sorry, hitting my microphone, what area of their shirt is the same distance as their eyes are, right? And I'll find that line and focus on that and swing that back up. I need a very hard line to focus on, especially with the 5D in low light. So it's center AF point. I don't go off to the edges. When I have plenty of light, like I have plenty of light in here right now, I can go off to the edges. I can go off to these focus points, and I'll do all right. As soon as I get to low light, I'm pretty much stuck at center. Okay? So autofocus is crucial. White balance, I don't really worry a whole lot about white balance. I just set my white balance to whatever lighting conditions I'm in. If I'm shooting with flash, I set it to flash. If I'm shooting in shade, I set it to shade. If I'm shooting out in the sun, I set it to sun. The number one crucial thing for me of setting that white balance is I just want to be able to, if I take a picture and look at it on the back of my camera, I'm previewing it pretty close to what it needs to be. I don't worry about doing auto white balance. I do auto white balance every now and then when I'm in a funky lighting condition. I don't know what it is. You know, you get into those sometimes. There's a bit of a mix, or it's not cloudy, it's not sunny, it's somewhere, what color, I don't know. Okay, auto white balance, click, and just see where it is in the neighborhood. I never, ever, ever am going to be on auto white balance when using flash with Pocket Wizards. All right, here's why. When you put a Pocket Wizard or some sort of trigger on your camera to fire a flash, and it's a third-party thing you're using. So you have a Canon or a Nikon, you put a Pocket Wizard on it, and you put your camera in auto white balance. When that camera fires, it has no clue that a flash is firing. It doesn't know, oh, there's a Pocket Wizard on top of me. I shall set to flash white balance. It doesn't know that. So it just tries to figure it out. And you can watch your color balance just go all over the place. Or you're shooting with flash and it looks too blue or it looks too yellow, or it's just like, that's not right. No, it's not right because it doesn't know a flash is firing. So go over to your camera, push the white balance button, bring it to the lightning bolt thingy. I get that. Is that the lightning bolt thingy? Yes. Yes, it's the lightning bolt thingy. It's the flash white balance. All right, read your manual. No, so I set my white balance to that. Now, at the end of the day, if I'm shooting raw, it doesn't matter. I can set the thing to fluorescent and shoot a whole job with it. And I'd be looking at the back of my camera going, that looks horrible. You know, and when they all pop up in Lightroom, they're like, that looks bad. I want them to pop up in Lightroom close to where they need to be. I'm going to deal with color and contrast and all of that on my own after the fact in post-production. If I have for some reason got myself into a situation where I had to shoot and then hand the card to a client, and it had to be JPEGs, then that would be a situation where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to set a custom white balance. I might set some contrast parameters in my picture style because I'm shooting to JPEG to hand it right to the client. That's when that kind of stuff would matter to me. I don't ever find myself in those situations. I'm never shooting to JPEG to have to hand to a client right away. I'm shooting to RAW, and the client's going to get their pictures in 5 to 10 business days, and it's all going to come through Lightroom and come through my post-production process. So I don't worry about custom white balance and all of that. We'll talk at some point this weekend more about, I worry about my monitors and my calibration and things like that. We'll get into that some this weekend. All right? And that's it. When I pick up that camera, that's it. We're going to get more into exposure here, though. All right? Because this is something I see lacking in a lot of people's lives. Are you raising your hand for something? Oh, you're scratching. Okay. All right. Real quick, let's just take a quick question break. Bring some questions on this. We're getting into apertures and shutter speeds and technical stuff coming up here. All right, right.
Quick question about focusing. So you're focusing on one person's eye, and you're using single point. What happens if you have 2 or 3 people and you want to focus on all their eyes?
So let's say I got a group of people. I think, how deep are those people going? So if you're all in the same line together, from here, like let's see the 3 of you guys right here, you're all about on the same line. I'm usually going to focus on the front person.
Okay.
And I'll let focus fall off to the people in the back if I need to. We'll get into that in depth of field.
Okay.
So if there's 3 of you and then 3 deep, then my depth of field needs to grow. But I focus on the person closest to us. When you're looking at a photograph, you're going to go to the person closest to the camera, and you're going to look at them first. I also focus on the closest eye.
Okay.
That's another kind of crucial focusing point. So Dave, if I'm shooting a photo of you and you're kind of looking off of there, but you're still looking at me, I'm going to focus on this eye because that's closest to camera. And that's going to be the eye the viewer connects with first because it's closest. If you just take your face off that way, I just naturally am looking at that eye anyways. You focus on the back eye, then you've got this big front eye out of focus. It's kind of weird. Kind of strange.
Question from Desansky in the chat room about, I like the tip on the focus of the line, like using a hard line. What if you're shooting at a 1.8 or a 1.2 and you just want the eye in focus?
God help you.
Can you focus on the line and that's...
No,
I mean,
no.
how
When
does
you're
that
at
work?
1.2, when you're shooting with some beast like this lens right over here, the 85 1.2, we're going to get into this in depth of field. When you're shooting at 1.2, your depth of field, your area of critical focus is so narrow. You better be dead on what you're focusing on because you could. Here's the eye, but you might catch a line back here, and so the ear is in focus and the eye is out. And just do a Flickr search on like really fast lenses and see people shooting them at 1.2 and things like that. And if you can look at them at a 1200 pixel or larger, you'll see a lot of times that focus point was off because your depth of field is so critical. So you're shooting 1.2 and you want just the eye to be in focus, then you need to focus on the eye. When I'm having to do a massive swing, like, oh, I gotta only use my center AF point, but man, I gotta swing the camera this much. Then I start stopping down my aperture to give me some wiggle room in that swing. Or if I picked up an AF point here, but their face is here, that's from this line here to here, that's what, 6 inches or so? I'm focusing here, but I want this in focus, so my depth of field better increase to the point where this is acceptably sharp.
So no recomposing when you're at a 1.2 basically.
At 1.2, no.
All right.
And when you're shooting wide open with that fast of a lens, like you're either on or you're off.
Right, so true.
There is no in between.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
And you're off in a heartbeat.
easily off.
Very. And the closer you, we'll see, the closer you get, the worse it becomes. All right. Other questions?
I have another question from OrdLOL. I really want to know.
Way to pick a username there, pal. Relax.
Just keep it real.
All right.
I really want to know why he doesn't use manual focus, because isn't focus only what we perceive to be sharp?
That gets very metaphor. I perceive this to be sharp. It's out of focus, dude. I perceive it to be sharp, dude. It's out of focus.
So why
Here's
not manual focus?
I don't manual focus on DSLRs, personally, because I hate the focusing screens on DSLRs. They suck. Just putting it out there. This is why you never like see me sponsored by Canon or Nikon or anybody, because I just come out and go, yeah, these cameras, they suck. I have these issues with them. No, but back in the days of film, we had split prisms and micro prisms, and you could interchange, like this Hasselblad here. Let me take this thing apart. You could change your focusing screen, all right? The way the camera works is that an SLR, the light comes through the lens, and then there's a mirror. Which camera are we on over here? Are we on center? I don't have a tally light, I can't see. So we have the mirror that goes up to this piece of ground glass. This is in your SLR kind of thing, right? And you could switch these out with the pro level cameras. And I think some of the high-end Canons, like the 4D Mark III S7 subparagraph 9, I think you can switch out focusing screens on some of the cameras now, but I haven't really looked into that. The basic out-of-the-box focusing screens, I can't stand them. They just don't snap the focus. And it'll look sharp to me. That looks sharp, click. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was off. I focused on the ear. I thought I was focusing on the eye. There have been times where I just have to pull off manual focus. But I don't like manual focus on DSLRs these days because I don't like the focusing screens. I can't trust that. I don't see it snap to focus like I do. Now, I'm shooting a Frankenstein camera recently where I'm putting a Hasselblad lens on a Canon body. I'll probably shoot that this weekend at some point. You have to manual focus at that point. You have to, because there's no autofocusing a Hasselblad lens on a Canon body. And it's pretty gorgeous, if you can get the focus right. Any other questions?
There's a ton of focus questions. People are
Focus.
focus. So Saab has a question. What would you recommend for people wearing glasses, like yourself, and any tips to avoid those green marks? How do you deal with it when shooting few hours?
Green marks?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sorry. It says grease marks.
Oh, grease marks.
Oops.
Grease marks.
Grease
Okay. I shoot with glasses. They're a pain. And I just kind of deal with it. I just smash the camera into my eye. It is a little more comfortable to take, but I'm that kind of person. I have to, I could shoot through and adjust my diopter on my viewfinder and look through and see correctly. And then as soon as the camera comes down, it's just all a blur. So I got to put these back on. And then I take them off, put them back on. Sometimes I wear contacts, but my eyes really can only deal with contacts for about 2 hours until it's just, I feel like there's fingernails just scraping on my eyeballs. So if I'm out on a 6-hour shoot, there's just no way I'm wearing contacts. And I ain't doing no LASIK. That's all I got. It's all I got. So I'm not ready to take a laser beam to my eyeballs. I'm just not.
And there's a quote.
Yeah. I'm not ready to take laser beams to my eyeballs. So I shoot with glasses. I press the things, just smash it into my face. My glasses are usually always kind of skewed and weird, and they're usually pushed back like this some because the camera's up in my face. And grease marks and all, and it's just, I have dirty, Meg all the time. It's like, how can you see out of your glasses? Somehow managed to do it, yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question from Gwinnett Tech Photo. So how do you focus for motion shots?
Oh, but that's Gwinnett Tech?
Yes, that's what it says.
That's where I went to school.
Oh, nice.
Alma Mater. Oh, sorry, internet. Bam! So for action shots, for moving shots, that is where the continuous focus comes in. So you got a bride coming down the aisle. You're down there at the front of the aisle. Here comes the bride. She's moving on down the aisle. It's not one of those like royal weddings where it's going to take her 10 minutes to walk down it, like step, pause. But they're moving. Or a kid running through the backyard and you're shooting, candid children portraiture and the kid's just going crazy running around. That is when those continuous focusing, modes come in handy, right? So that is also when you have to compose around an autofocus point. To me, I see that as a limitation. And as I'm shooting, I go, okay, I got to compose around an AF point because I'm trying to focus on a moving target. And I deal with that limitation then. For portrait situations, though, I'm not. So, of course, a moving target, when either you as the photographer are moving, or the subject is moving, or you're both moving, then you need some help with that. And you have to compose around an AF point at that point.
Keep hitting you with questions. We have a question from Avishek. How do you use multiple focus points, and when do you use the 9 points? When do you do that?
I keep it on single.
Always.
And just move it where I need it.
Okay.
I don't do the whole, let it figure it out. Like there's a mode where you can do it and it'll I don't know what algorithms it's looking for. I've tried it, and sometimes it's like, oh, hey, check that out. And I've seen point and shoots where it finds the face. And I even seen on a point and shoot when the subject smiles, it takes the picture. Like, okay, that's stupid. But anyways, so that when it's kind of the multiple and letting it figure it out thing, I just don't use it because I can't trust it. Really, I can't trust it to find the eyes and nail it. That's my job. I think that if I had to just take my camera and just shoot it blind over a wall, for whatever reason, you know, you'd probably get arrested in most places for that. But if I had to hold my camera up over a wall and shoot something on the other side of it, maybe I would want to use that mode. But I can't really comprehend of why I would want it picking autofocus points for me.
How often do you use the middle point and recompose, or use a different single point?
I try to avoid the middle point recompose because it's usually a pretty big swing when I have to do that, because I'm usually pushing people off the edges of my compositions. So to focus on the center and then recompose is a pretty big swing of camera. I only go to that sort of method when like the AF points can't focus in. And I find it specifically with the 5D Mark II that I shoot, that when you get off to these edge AF points, it has a little harder time. You need good light for it really just to grab it and focus correctly. In lower light levels, these out here on the edge have a harder time locking in accurately. Whereas I find the center point locks in quicker and more accurately in low light levels.
I'm still not cursing, Zach.
All right, good. And you know, the reason I have a Canon 580 EX2 flash, the only reason I have it is I got it for its AF assist. Because my Nikon went in the shop, I had to shoot a wedding, had to shoot everything with 5Ds, and I knew that when I walked into that reception, if it got too dark, I would need the AF assist light off the 580. And so I kept the 580 on there just for the AF assist light. And then eventually got one of those STE2s. So, yeah. I bought a stupid flash just for an AF assist light. A $400 AF assist light.
But good to know for people who are in the same situation.
Yeah, yeah. You'd need an AF assist light on a Canon. Pretty bad.
Any questions in the audience?
No?
Well, I'm really enjoying this. I don't know about you guys, but this is a lot of
All
experience.
right.
Awesome.
I'm enjoying it too.
It's great. Thanks,
It's
Zach.
fun being
As
on
is
front
the
of
internet. As is the internet.
Okay.
We have more questions, but we can keep going if you want.
All right,
Up to
we're
you.
going to keep going. We're going to
Okay.
keep going. There's plenty of times for questions. All right.